Hello and welcome back to the 1904 Club from the Hull Daily Mail. And given it's April Fool's Day, we've got Prutts back with us. Hiya.
I think this is what the kids do. Which obviously, if you're listening, doesn't work. I've just called him a loser. It's been ages, hasn't it? It's been absolutely ages. I thought I'd come back when the sun was shining, and it is. So, hello.
You're a busy boy, though, aren't you? Now you've got about 15 different podcasts. You're occasionally on the telly. You do some
occasionally. Yeah. So you could say that for any other business, but if anyone's hanging around at dusk at the MKM on Thursday and wants a laugh, then feel free to turn up to jeer me into the car park on a bike.
We can't wait. It's going to be iconic. Get down there with your placards and your, other things. Kathryn, how are you?
I'm not bad. I was just saying, I didn't know if Prutts had actually survived Cheltenham, because that was the last time, I think, before he went there, was that I'd seen him. I think that we've been on the same one together. So, and then he comes back after a defeat.
He's been in recovery since Cheltenham.
I said my dad. Is it you playing a game at the MKM? Is that what you're doing?
No, we're for the British Heart. Thank you, Kathryn. I can actually introduce it in a professional manner now, can't I? For the British Heart Foundation, in conjunction with Sky Bet, they're doing this Every Minute Matters relay between, I presume, all EFL clubs. And my leg, brilliantly, which I've still wonder how I said yes to, is Harrogate to Hull on a bike, which works out about 67 miles. And I will feel every single one of those miles, I can tell you now. I mean, just thinking about it now. But anyway, we start at Harrogate Town on Thursday morning, and then we've got a very rough ETA at the MKM, barring injury or death.
I'll get my relatives in Hull to come and cheer you on.
What time are you expected at the MKM Pros?
I mean, how long? Don't know. I've done 3 bike rides in my life, and they're terrible. So I would guess mid to late afternoon. I mean, obviously, no one's got anything to do, so might as well just sit around and wait for us to come over. My suggestion was just hit the M62 and the 63 straight away and bat down there on these road bikes, but apparently you're not allowed to do it on a motorway, which kills it a bit. So,
I mean, there's that many roadworks that you should be okay. I mean, you couldn't go more than 15 miles an hour anyway.
Yeah, get down Spring Bank. Yeah, I never thought about it that way. Yeah. So that's what it is, and I've been my thought processes, and I mean this with total love for Lee Trundle, but he's done a leg over in the valleys in Wales, which was about 70 odd miles uphill and down dale, and if he got through it, so I think fingers crossed I should be all right. But again, Stuart Dallas texted me, "Oh, are you doing the leg from Leeds to Harrogate? What, the one that'll take probably about an hour, Stu?" No, unfortunately not. I've been roped into the one that's going to take most of the day. So that's what we're up to.
That's fantastic, isn't it?
Curtis is going from Hull to Grimsby on Friday.
That's a short straw, isn't it? Really,
Hull City legend.
How can people donate to it, or is that something they can do? Or
well, again, I'm making a joke of it, but it's all in the guise of raising awareness to learn CPR. 15 minutes of your time. You get on the website. You can take the online course to learn, obviously, life-saving skills. Is if and when any of us have the misfortune of ended up in a position such as that, you're hopefully surrounded by people that actually know what to do if that is the position that you find yourself in. So it's to raise awareness, Baz, more than cash.
Okay, great.
But I've been doing a separate kitty to just, if you want to give me money for doing it, I'm very happy with that.
Yeah, we'll get your bank details later.
Flash them up on screen.
And last but by no means least, it's the return of another wandering son. Fletch, how the devil are you?
I'm all right, Baz. I've been trotting the country in my non-league adventures. It's been happy, it's been sad, it's been exciting, it's been dull, it's been a little bit of everything. A bit like Hull City.
Yay. So we've had 5 minutes of trying to avoid the elephant in the room that was that 1-0 defeat to Luton on Saturday. Prutts, I'll come to you first because you had the game on, at least in the Sky studio. Although, as you said before, you were consuming rather large amounts of chocolate, which I'm sure that most City fans would probably have rather have been doing than watching the rather unfortunate Louis Cole smack the ball against Alfie's face and into the back of the net. That was that job done.
Comical, really, wasn't it?
It was kind of a goal that summed up Hull City's season in many ways.
Yeah, we spoke to Matt Bloomfield before the game, and he was obviously given the situation that Luton find themselves in. It was very much a must-win for them in that particular guys. As you say, the disappointment comes from City's point of view, which is a comical way of conceding a goal. And what was it, 11 seconds after
something like
half
that,
time? So you've got that kind of cliched working your way through the first half. The manager gets the players in at half time. There will be that Sunday league element of let's keep it tight for 10 minutes. And then you look around and 11 seconds in, you're thinking, oh, dear me. And then as the game kind of motors on, and I know it's something that Kathryn wants to chat about with regards to how you then change a game from the boss's point of view, just seemingly in a broad scope of plus points within the last few months. A game such as that, I think, keeps it very, very real, doesn't it? The threat of potentially, unfortunately, finishing below the dotted line. So I think, as a bit of a broad brushstroke from what you take from the game, it's absolutely one to learn from. I want to show as well, with I think your maths as well in due course, Baz, about where City still do find themselves. There's absolutely no relaxing, is there? There's no kind of, you've got a couple of teams down there that we thought was Luton, and you look at Plymouth's play as well, even though they got a point at the weekend, of thinking that the bottom 2/3 is boxed off, no chance. And I think as we talk about this and work our way further up the division, there's plenty of teams there that should be absolutely looking over the shoulders.
That's it, Kathryn, coming to you. We'll get on to how the picture looks at the bottom a bit later on, and fixtures, and obviously the looming derby game on Wednesday night, which could have a massive impact on where City find themselves by the time they kick off at Hillsborough on Saturday. But just your thought. We spoke last week, didn't we, about looking ahead to the game and how, obviously I was, Burnsley specifically called me negative Neris because I was really worried. I just felt we were going to lose. It just felt I was really negative, and it as it transpired. But
Rich coming from him.
I know that was the irony.
Joking, Burnsley, I'm joking.
No, it's true. But like in the first half, I thought City played. I know Luton hit the post early on, but City I thought played fairly well without really looking like scoring. But it was, as Prutts says, so early in the second half. Once that goal went in, and the game was gone. I never ever felt like City were going to come back into it. What was your assessment?
Yeah, exactly that. Really, I think end of first half. I think, as you said, it kind of looked like we were getting to grips with things a little bit. Luton sort of started a lot quicker than we did, and then when you concede a goal like that just after half time, it's sort of like, naturally as fans you kind of start to groan. So you can only imagine what the players were thinking, and I think we could kind of see that on the pitch. And Luton, to be fair, I would almost say that if they defended well, but it almost felt like they didn't have much to defend, because I couldn't really remember a real chance until Charlie Hughes kind of blasted one from long range and forced the keeper into a save right at the end of the game. But it was just kind of, I sat there watching it, kind of willing the ball to kind of go into the net, but sort of knowing that it felt different to that game against Oxford when they went behind and then came back to win. I just didn't think on Saturday that they were going to score. And I kind of question maybe some of I think it's maybe the first time, I know maybe other people have done it, but it's maybe the first time I've kind of potentially questioned the manager's selection and substitutions, because I just didn't think it worked. And I love Casey Palmer, and I think he'd almost deserved his start because of what he'd done as a substitute in the other games. But I might have to die on the hill of, I just think his best role for us at the minute, maybe not long term going forward, but his best role for us at the minute is coming off the bench and making an impact. Because when he started games, I just don't think he's quite had the same level of influence on the game. And when he was going off, I was sort of sat there thinking, that's who I want coming on. I want him coming on now at 60 minutes to come on and make an impact like he's done in the other matches. And instead you've got Matt Crooks coming on, and I don't think Matt Crooks is an impact sub. I think I'd rather have had him playing for 60 minutes, sort of worked hard and then take him off. I almost kind of felt Regan Slater might have been a better sub just because of his energy, and it felt like we needed a bit of life. Amrabat coming on over Mason Burstow confused me as well, because not seen much of Amrabat since he came in January. And apart from that first game against Millwall, when I think he nearly went through at one point, I've not seen him kind of come on and really, do something kind of special or, look like changing a game. I think he's more of a person you bring on if you're seeing out a game, potentially because of his experience. And while Mason Burstow's not sort of scored loads and loads of goals this season, when he has come off the bench, he's always tried, he's made an impact. He's a bit quicker. He could have given us a bit of a boost of energy. It might not have made a difference, but that was kind of my takeaways from the game.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think my concern watching the game was that I felt with Palmer, and I think we'd all agree that Casey warranted a start. It was where you got him in the team after his impact. But I felt like pushing Gowhart wide left lost that impact in that 8 to 10 role. I asked Ruben about the change to bring on Amrabat as opposed to Burstow. Obviously, we saw Burstow score the winning goal at home to Swansea before Christmas, and he said it was because of the physicality. He felt that Amrabat, it was such a physical game that Amrabat's physicality would work and try and get crosses into the box. He said it didn't work. He said, but that was his intention, because he felt that Amrabat alongside Coyle down the right-hand side, if they could get more physicality out there and more crosses into the box, they'd create more openings. It didn't. It just didn't work, did it? Fletch, where are you at with Saturday and kind of that? Again, they could ill afford to lose, but ultimately did, with not a great second half performance, and one that Ruben said they lost their identity.
It's a bit worrying when the manager says they lost their identity, because then they're trying to figure it out themselves out there on the pitch. And you mentioned people like Geldhart playing out on the left-hand side, and we're going to come on to Carl Joseph in a moment, but it feels like at times I'm really struggling to work out like the clear identity of some of the individuals in the team, because it feels a bit muddled at times. So like, I know that Miller and Bellumi have been injured all season, but they just haven't really been able to create any magic from the wide areas, and that's made them a bit one-dimensional going forward. I think in the grand scheme of things, you look at what they've done away from home, and there seems to be no pressure on them away from home, and they seem to relish in that environment, because they've beaten Sheffield United, they've beaten Sunderland, they've drawn at West Brom, beaten Blackburn since the turn of the new year. And now going into the game, I was thinking, after beating Oxford and beating Plymouth, the only ones who could, let themselves down were themselves. And how often does a football club have a blip of this nature? It's pretty much every single season, but then the timing of it as well can have a detrimental effect. And I said before the Plymouth game, if they lost to Plymouth, that would have been like Huddersfield or Barnsley in 2019-20, and that would have sent them on a spiral. I don't think this will send them on a spiral. I think it's more of a reality check, if you like, for the task at hand, because they're still on the right side of the dotted line, but they need to pull their socks up.
Prutts, what was the feeling in the studio? Obviously, as you had the game on, and I know the Watford-Plymouth game was your main game, but as you say, you spoke to Matt Bloomfield. I actually spoke to him after the game, and he was such a really, really nice guy. I know you championed him.
Lovely, isn't he? Yeah, he's a lovely fellow.
A few months ago. And obviously you've got Curtis in there, Chris Uwalumo as well. What was the overriding feeling about, what that result did for either club and the overall picture at the bottom?
Well, I think we spoke about it before in regards to Luton making a change, and to all intents and purposes, and I mean this with the greatest respect to Matt, because like I said, I've got a lot of time for him. It hasn't necessarily given them the upswing that they thought it was going to give them, has it? With regards to where they find themselves in the division. And we use the example of City making a change as a positive thing, of obviously Ruben coming in and changing the feeling, and not just, if I hesitate to use the word philosophy, but the feeling around the football team and the football club, the players seem a little bit more positive. And I think, again, broadly, we're talking about a disappointing result on the weekend, but 4 unbeaten before that against teams, that of substantial championship source. So it's imperative to go along with what Fletcher's saying there. It shouldn't signal a worrying kind of nosedive into the end of the season. Yes, we have come off the back of the last international break. Yes, there is this kind of little mini season that everyone's entering into now, whether it is looking for the top 2, the top 6, or getting out the bottom 3. So I think it's important to put it into context. Again, when you're seeing it from a distance and not feeling the atmosphere at the MKM, which again we've discussed on many an occasion about what comes first, the performance or the atmosphere then the performance. And I think there's somewhere in between where
frozen in time, Kathryn. He's come back. He's back. Yeah.
Oh, did I stop talking then?
You froze for a moment.
Did I?
You didn't freeze on mine.
Oh,
that was just all the Botox. But that ability to see what goes first, the performance or the atmosphere, can be reflected in a game such as that. And as you say, Baz and Kathryn, and I'm sure Fletch is still there somewhere. When a game, you get a feeling sometimes, don't you, when a game takes that turn just after half time. And I'm not saying that we're all naturally pessimistic, that you might as well think, right, I'm off. You know what I mean? 50 minutes into the game. But sometimes you can sit there and think, well, we could be here all day and I don't think we're going to get anywhere near scoring a goal. And again, I mean that with the greatest respect to the players that we're talking about. But sometimes you get games that just meander and come away from any form of direction or control, because we're talking about a Luton side that has vastly underperformed this season, but is fundamentally made up of the players that not gave the Premier League a half decent crack, didn't they? So that they potentially could climb out of trouble, but I don't think, from what I saw, there was no form of kind of surrender from City. It was just a game where they couldn't muster up what was needed to get themselves back into the game off a farcical own goal. And you have games like that, but I just sincerely hope with the 7 remaining that's not the norm. It's more about, right, box that off. The manager will be discussing what he thinks led to that lack of identity. Take nothing away from Luton, fighting for something for the lives as well. They won't be playing pretty football between now and then and the end of the season. It'll have to just be effective, just like City's will be. So I think perspective is important, given those 4 games that did precede what we saw at the weekend.
Prutts, from a player's point of view, just quickly, when you're in a game like that, and you know the importance of that specific occasion. You know, you've been on the ropes a couple of times early in the first half. You've sort of gradually, ground your way back into the game, and you're probably going into the half time in the ascendancy. That freak goal happens at the start of the second half. When you're out there, how are you feeling that this could be one of those days where we're probably not at our best, we're struggling, the opposition at low block, as we call it now, 11 players behind the ball, they're making it really difficult, they're really physical, and we're kind of, to coin a phrase Burnsy used last week, kind of walking in treacle.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good way to put it. I mean, the irony being that you've got a side that scored a goal, or a goal was presented to them when you've got the likes of Carlton Morris and Elijah Adebayo. I mean, Adebayo's stats for missing big chances when it comes to his figures connected to XG, I think, is pretty staggering this season. So when they're looking at their 2 strikers that both got 10 goals in the Premier League, who for some reason are not anywhere near at it, they then get a Hail Mary of a goal such as that, which, I mean, if Louis tried that another 100 times, I would be very surprised if it ended up in the back of the net, very much so. So there is that sense of it being that. And it's funny because it's because of what the nature of football is, because everyone's sat there watching it and understanding the privilege of the players that are there. Doesn't mean to say that you don't have games like that. The games that almost kind of have I'm trying to think what the correct metaphor would it be, like another day at the office, in inverted commas, where some days are great, some days are not so great, some days drag, some days seem very productive, others just fly by. You can sometimes get the sense of, and what you do professionally, hopefully, is you'd address it after the game, where you'd be scratching your head and, like, if everyone's getting showered or getting changed, the manager's gone, and you can sit there and just think, bloody hell, lads. I mean, anyone else feel the same thing, that we were just, I don't know why we weren't at it. I don't know why the feeling was around the game, early kickoff. I mean, with the experience of watching lots of games on a Saturday lunchtime over this season, I'd say there's a fair portion that take a while to get going. I always felt a bit like that as a player as well, because it is slightly different to your normal routine. But I'm giving a lot of excuses to the players there, which shouldn't be the case. But I think you can get it. And the City fans are too long in the tooth for me to say that wouldn't be the case and for it to be believable. I think City fans would sit there thinking, well, come on, let's give it till about 70, then let's kind of toddle off. And you'd understand that completely, wouldn't you? Because it was one of those games between 2 teams. Like I said, I think what Ruben's done since he's come in has been, you'd have to class it as broadly successful, because if season finishes now and City are where they are, that's a success from the absolute kind of hole they dug themselves into. It's not great, but it's better than what we thought it might have been. But I think the reason that you get a game such as that, and that reminder of a game and a performance such as that from City, is because they haven't been consistent enough. Neither have Luton. Luton have been terrible at times this season. Plymouth the same, Derby County, all the teams that we're talking about there. And we're going to be throwing in QPR at one point, because QPR started poorly, went on a real upswing. Suddenly they're hovering potentially to go and climb back into the top 6. And then you get a little block of games in the Championship a month, 6 weeks, and suddenly your season's back to being poor again. Hull City's has been across the board inconsistent, and therefore not a good season across the board. So this is where they still find themselves. And I hate to say it, and I think City fans do understand that, given take away the possible anomaly of last year, that in recent seasons, this is what it's been, isn't it? Apart from getting promoted back from League One, it's been gritting and grinding and getting through it, and almost kind of thinking, bloody hell, I wish it was May, whatever it was, and that last game had been played and City were safe. That's just what everybody wants to know, don't they?
Go on, Fletch.
I think there's other factors as well, isn't there, Prutts, though? I think you speak about getting to damage limitation. I totally agree with you. But I think quite a lot of this season, especially the first half of the season, was really built on a false reality of what I think Hull City as a football club actually was, because the massive departures of various players and then bringing in an awful lot more, you've got to get them to gel together, a manager whose system didn't work, a repair job from Ruben Sayers, and that's been done to an extent. But then again, in January, another massive churn of players coming into the club, especially. And a lot has been, and we've talked about this before, you've got to be a special player to be able to hit the ground running in January and make a really good impact on a club that's at the wrong end of the league table as opposed to the top end of the league table, because you're coming in with the responsibility, essentially, of trying to drag your team out of that situation. And some players have done better than others. I look at Matt Crooks. I think Crooks has done well when he's fit. Geldhart's done well when he's fit. Apart from not scoring, I actually really like Kyle Joseph, because we mentioned Baz before. We talked about his pressing in matches and how important it actually is. But I take the point of fans who would like to now see someone who's officially a striker or an attacking player starting to score goals. I think that's perfectly right. And to relay back to my previous point, I think about the game in general, and we can all, as you say, you can all have an off day. We can all have a bad day at the office. I think of the chances in that game. Palmer's in the first half, Hughes is in the second half. Very little else to write home about. And when you talk about Adebayo and Morris, if they were in a promotion chase in Luton, for me, they're burying those two chances. The one that hits the post and he can overthinking it, controlling it into the penalty area and spooning it wide. It's all different variables of what ifs and if buts and maybes, but we just like to stir the pot, don't we?
What they did do, I thought Luton as a team, they were well organised, gritty. I thought they were poor, given the quality we know they've got. What I would say about Morris and Adebayo, I thought they did occupy Jones and Hughes well. I thought their movement, they didn't create anything necessarily. Obviously, the goal came from getting first contact on the header and what have you, but it was free. But I did feel that they occupied, space well and gave Luton a focal point in the top third of the pitch, something the City have had so infrequently all season. Kathryn, on the subject of Carl Joseph, he's obviously, he came in from Blackpool, £2.5 million into a team that was struggling, weren't scoring goals, weren't creating a huge amount of chances. He's obviously become the focal point in João Pedro's absence. It's now 11 games without a goal. He got kind of a half chance in the second half on Saturday, which was very quickly taken away from him. And then he came off. There were a few jeers. Ruben's kind of defended him and said, we're going to stick with him. He's young. We need to help him. Carl said to me on Thursday that the manager is doing great and taking the pressure off of him. What's kind of your assessment of Kyle, as a 23-year-old striker coming in from League One in this situation?
I don't think there was many of us that really expected when he signed in January that he was suddenly going to score 10 goals and hit the ground running straight away. I think a lot of us probably felt like he was a player to sort of work with and make better, and somebody that we were buying now, but with an eye for seasons to come. Obviously, we're in a situation where we need to pick up points. We need people to score goals, and João Pedro missing 3 games wasn't helpful, and it's put more pressure on Kyle Joseph because he had to start. He's had to start up all 3 of those games, and unfortunately, he's finding it a little bit difficult. He can't just kind of get that slice of luck where he can get a tap in or something like that. I think we've all kind of praised him for his work rate. I think he does work quite hard for the team, which I think maybe benefits you more away from home when you have less of the ball. I think you notice maybe I don't know if flaws is the right word, but when you're playing at home and you've got more of the ball and you're dominating a match, that's where you're looking at your strikers to score your goals, and that's where they're judged. So they're not judged on how hard they work for the team and whether how many miles they've covered in matches. They're judged on their output, and unfortunately for Kyle, he's just not managed to get that goal yet, and it must be difficult for him as well as a young player to to kind of come into this environment. And you can see he's desperate to score, and it's just one of those kind of horrible situations. But I think now João Pedro is back, hopefully that might take the pressure off him a little bit. And also, I'm kind of thinking physically, the level of the difference between League One and the Championship, it is a jump for players. If you've not kind of played regularly at that level before, that's tricky for him as well. And actually, I think maybe him, if Pedro comes back into the team for Sheffield Wednesday away, and you take Kyle out and give him a bit of a rest, maybe he's somebody that's better coming off the bench and trying to maybe pop up with something when the opposition team's tiring, rather than kind of having to start a game and what kind of wear the defence down a little bit.
Fletch, on the subject.
Sorry to butt in, Buzz. It was £2.5 million, Kyle.
Yeah.
Bloody hell! I mean, that is far be it for me to cast aspersions on what a player costs for what he's done so far. That's a lot of money. With no champ experience, Wigan, Swansea, Cheltenham, Oxford, Blackpool, and Hull City. That's. Anyone else think that's a lot of money for a relatively unproven player?
It's an awful lot of money.
It's a lot to pay for a player that's not got a record of score. There was never a guarantee when they signed him. That's the season he scored 10 goals. We'll bet on that. It's they're betting on a player for the future. That's what they're doing. So, but that's the problem, isn't it? Because we've signed him in a January transfer window, and I just never expected him to make an impact because of the fee. It's like if you buy him in the summer, actually, I almost kind of think you've got that time to work with him. But when you buy him,
it can be a bit quieter, can't it, Kathryn? It's like we've got him in, but it's cost a lot of money, but we can just bet him in slowly but surely.
And the problem, the bigger problem for me is not so much the money; it's the fact that Hull City have got a squad full of players that don't score goals. You look throughout their team. Nobody stands out as well. He's a 15. That player there has got 15 goals in his. Literally, the support to, not that he needed support for Kathryn's opinion, but exactly that. You're paying money. You're paying a sizable, and we don't know how these fees break down, do we? Not many clubs go, here's £2.5 million straight away. There you go. A lot of these things are staggered over the contract of a player, and there's different payment plans, but. That, I think this is me, not like I think Carl's an hard-working footballer. I do slightly debate the point of him being young, the fact that he turns 24 in September. Yeah.
But, and I know that Ruben's kind of said about young player, not really, mate. He's maybe we're judging him slightly quickly with what we've seen so far, and then you get to the end of the season, box it off. Hopefully, as a Championship club, then you go again, and we might have this discussion in a year's time where Carl's absolutely ripping things up because the physical capabilities of the player, I think, do very much suit the Championship, and that's not damning him with faint praise. He's a specimen. He can do that side of the game, but quite clearly been brought in to score goals. Now, we've again another point we made before when we've spoken about what a striker can do. How does the team play? Is the team facilitating what Carl needs to get in the right place at the right time with the right type of service? That's a debate and a problem for Ruben to solve. But I think that sense of what they've paid there and what they're getting, it does sound like I'm getting on them a bit. I'm not. But it's not a straight line. We've seen look at vastly inflated transfer fees. Christ, Man United could be a case in point of who they get through the door for the price they get and what they actually get from the players. It's obviously a very different thing to Hull City, but City don't seem to me to be the type of club, nor the owner, that has £2.5 million to chuck around on someone that's not going to score the goals that you've literally brought him in to do.
And that's the problem, isn't it? As I say, that City have got a lot of very good players, a lot of players that might chip up with a couple of goals here and there, but nobody is in that team is a prolific scorers, and that is their problem. They've got a lot of players that can, that they haven't this season necessarily dipped in with 5 goals, 6 goals. Up until Kamara scored at West Brom, own goals was their second second leading scorer with 3. I mean, Kamara's now got 4. João Pedro's got 6. I mean, and he's the leading scorer. So
that is just, it's shocking, really. I mean,
that's where they are.
And I'm not saying it's. I mean, I was a very quick scan of my career. You would see that I was not a goal scoring footballer, Christ. But that sense of wherein lies the reason of City's season, and we can look at different management and at what stage players are coming in. Going back to Kathryn's point about the players that have come in, and Fletch's, which everything that happened at the end of last season with the manager going and the standard of players going, if you almost kind of leapfrogged over Tim coming in and completely erased that, if you brought in Ruben at that time with Crooks, with Joe Gelhardt, with someone like Carl that had the summer to settle in and get into it. Yes, it's very hypothetical, which doesn't make for a great podcast listen, but you kind of thinking City could be in a vastly different position that they find themselves in without that first third/half of the season on what now looks like a potentially disastrous experiment, doesn't it?
In terms of goals scored, only Luton and Millwall have scored less. City have scored 39, so they're averaging a goal a game. Luton have scored 35 and Millwall 37. That is their problem. So that's something, and that is the issue. I think a lot of people raised Carl Joseph's fee in January. That's a lot of money, but I guess City didn't want to pay £2.5 million. Blackpool drove up the price. It was January. They didn't want to lose what they class as a key player. So I guess there's an element of the January tax involved in that, but it is still an awful lot of money. Not the players' fault, of course, but they need players like Kyle and Joe Gelhardt and Casey Palmer and João Pedro and Abu Kamara. They're attacking players.
Sorry to be kind of hijacking this, but that it's just that fee's thrown me a bit. I'm struggling to think of a team that you would look at in the bottom third of the championship that's chucked around that type of money.
Yeah, no, it's fair.
On one player. That's. But again, this is no personal attack on Kyle or anything like that at all, because there's a very good player in there that you can see he wants it more than anyone else to be able to show it week in, week out. But that's really quite surprised me, that, considering that we've spoken about financials of City in the last kind of few months.
Well, they certainly need a return from it. Kathryn, I know you've got to head off very soon. Let's talk, before we get onto the relegation picture a bit later on, obviously Derby play on Wednesday night. Sheffield Wednesday this weekend then, Kathryn. Well, obviously Prutts has got a former Wednesday legend, or I don't know if you can be a former legend. Are you a former legend, or are you still a legend?
No, legend. I was just there for a little bit wearing the shirt. I think that's how you'd quantify that. I occupied a bit of space on that pitch for a small period of time in its history.
Kathryn, given City's away form recently is by the Cardiff shocker, and obviously the defeat at Burnley, where everybody gets beat at Burnley now. They've been decent on the road, haven't they? And with Wednesday to come on Saturday, some problems for Wednesday, it would appear. And then Watford away next Tuesday. That the next 2 away games against teams in that middle period of the table, it's a big opportunity, isn't it?
It is, and I think Sheffield Wednesday home record isn't particularly great either. From what they were saying, yeah. So you're expecting a reaction, I think, aren't you? I mean, when they had the Cardiff game, obviously they had a long time to come back for that. I think was it Plymouth afterwards, but we got a reaction from them after that really poor result, and that's kind of what you want again, and that's what I'm expecting. And I think, as difficult as it is to go to Sheffield Wednesday just because of the Yorkshire derby element, Sheffield Wednesday not really got anything to play for in the sense of making the playoffs or dropping down. Only kind of got pride. Obviously, sometimes that can work the other way, and they can be kind of more relaxed and just play with freedom or whatever. But but it's an opportunity, I think, for potentially to get 3 points. Yeah, and it'll either go that way or Josh Windess will score the winner or something like that. So it's got one of two outcomes written all over it. But just with the away form and as you know how much better they've been on the road, I'm kind of hopeful that maybe they can bounce straight back. That would be the best thing that they could do. And I also kind of see Watford as an opportunity to do that as well, because again, another kind of team that have not really going to make the playoffs. They've kind of hung in and around there. They obviously, you mentioned they got beat by Oxford just before the international break, and I think did they draw with Plymouth at the weekend. So that really is that should be seen as an opportunity now. These two games where they're not easy, they're still difficult places to go away from home, but you kind of view them as I'm viewing them as two games they could win. If they could win one of them and draw the other, that would be fantastic. And as we say, on the road, they seem to enjoy themselves a little bit more than they do at home.
Fletch, Wednesday at home haven't won since New Year's Day when they beat Derby. They've got obviously City have got a worse home record than Wednesday. They're 5 points off the top six and drew at Cardiff at the weekend. This is a kind of must win for Wednesday, isn't it? If they're going to try and close that, they're in 12th, I think, but there's a 5 point gap to them in the top six. This is obviously a huge game for both teams.
Oh, huge. Yeah, absolutely. I think it's one of those things, though, isn't it? Like, as journalists and as supporters, we look at this stuff more than the players will. But our record at Hillsborough is shocking. Absolutely shocking in recent years.
What are you going to say then?
Hey, I'd like to be professional. I'd like to be professional, Prutts. I'll use an SH, but then I'll stick an OCK after it. Yeah, and that's stuff that we digest. And I know for a fact that Ruben says and the players won't be thinking about that at all, and they'll be thinking about their game. But it's strange because I've mentioned before about Sheffield United, Sunderland, West Brom, etc. The pressure's on the home team. And this kind of comes into a point that I wanted to make at the start of the pod, really. And that is that I feel Hull City are a team that play well when the pressure isn't bestowed to them. But when it is, they crumble on most weeks. Okay, they beat Oxford and they beat Plymouth, but look at some of the games they've had. I think people fancied them at Cardiff. People obviously fancied them at home against Stoke. People fancied them at home against Luton. And they haven't been able to deliver in those games. So I'm actually quite glad that I think many will feel that the pressure will be on the team in blue and white, because that might just relax Hull City a little bit. And just to box off the players and fees and stuff from January, the only one who comes close from having a look through the league is Romney, who signed for Oxford, because according to the site I use, they paid nearly £2 million for him. But then most of the clubs at the bottom end of the Championship have spent by letting someone big go. For example, Whittaker going to Middlesbrough, paying their fee, and then they've reinvested it to try and get other players in.
Yeah. Prutts, in terms of Wednesday then, on Saturday, that is, they've obviously got the issue now where the players haven't been paid March. The club released a statement on Monday night. More off the field issues. It's down to Chansiri's companies again, but it just creates that yet more angst between the supporters. Chansiri, there's growing expectation that Danny Roll is going to leave in the summer. He's been linked to Southampton. So is, in fairness, Liam Rossignol, who's doing a phenomenal job, by the way, at Strasbourg. But this feels, and I know what Fletch says, that historically, City at Hillsborough has not been great. But this does feel like a big opportunity for City to go there. I'm not going to say their need is greater, because Wednesday would argue, well, we're still in touch with the playoffs, but we've got to win. Their form isn't great.
Yeah.
How do you see it?
Well, the thing potentially where you could have a Hull City side turning up and almost kind of being a little bit peripheral to what's going on. Now that then goes into what Fletch is saying about that lack of pressure, meaning City can swoop in there, get 3 points and get the backsides back on the 62 and on, because that place will be toxic. And it'll be toxic because I've stood there pitch side when at the start of the season, it was the start of last season, when they were working their way through several managers very, very quickly indeed. And the atmosphere, the team, that the opposition side, again, almost kind of peripheral to what was going on, because there was anger in the stands at the ownership. You could feel a sense of anger from the players, and quite rightly so. And that kind of finger that gets pointed about, oh, well, the players aren't paid on time, but yes, they're earning vast amounts of money, but everyone lives relatively and accordingly to what their wages are, don't they? So it is a very, very big deal. and then maybe even from a Sheffield Wednesday supporters' point of view, where they're kind of showing early bird season ticket renewal prices months ago, yet get to this stage of the season where you then can't pay the players. That again is something that's got people scratching their heads. Whether it's it'll be vast sums of money that we will have no comprehension of with the owner and his different businesses and the cash flow in and out of Sheffield Wednesday. But when he's come forward and suggested fans put their hands in the pocket even more than they actually do by virtue of buying a ticket, which watching a championship game is not cheap remotely, is it? So him then saying, well, we've got taxes to pay, so if you want to dib in and give us a hand, therefore you can have a say. Up until that point, keep your mouth shut. It's just another thing which chucks this up with regards to what goes into the game, and it'll either galvanise the players or really, for want of a better phrase, miss the players. They'll either go tear-assing around the pitch and want to take it out on the opposition, which is Hull City, or there'll be a sense of injustice and a flatness to the game and the occasion, which City can take advantage of. Sorry.
You talk about those ticket prices. City have sold, which is incredible given it's the Challenge Cup FC versus KR game at the same day. City have sold over 3,000 tickets at £36 a pop, and they're not even the most expensive tickets. Hillsborough, I think home fans somewhere else in the stadium is like £45-46. So it's no wonder, and this isn't a podcast to cream over Sheffield Wednesday fans given the history, but you can understand why they are so angry.
Yeah, absolutely. And what will happen, and I think we'd all be kind of in agreement with this, but please tell me if I'm speaking out of turn, that they've done relatively well on the pitch with a very, very good manager who, with the best will in the world, can you see him starting the season next season at Sheffield Wednesday? He's that coveted. He's been spoken about that highly. He's even spoke about how he's dealt with the ownership, where they've come out and said something completely different. The Shea Charles fiasco of, 1 minute is there, next minute is not, next minute is going to Sheffield United, next minute it's been recalled, and then suddenly he's back plate and you're going, and the manager's just got to deal with that. And he's dealt with it all in a very, very calm and collected way, which will mean that you get potential suitors going, well, he can sort out a team on a pitch, but my word, he can deal with the politics as well. So, and I hate to say it because it's a wonderful, wonderful football club, which, as we know, was within a game's width of getting themselves back into the Premier League, but it's knocking on 25 years now. And with this current ownership, there might be a changeover of players in the summer as well. I just find that what they've done, in spite of what goes on off the pitch, has been phenomenal, really. Still with an outside chance of that playoff places. But again, further to Kathryn's point, where potentially Wednesday might find themselves in a position where they're not playing for much. I mean, literally, whether it's a position in the division or whether it's actually getting paid for it as well.
Yeah, Kathryn, before you go, big opportunity for City though, isn't it? And Ruben wanted a game this midweek to get that Luton game out of the system. They've got to wait all that angst, all that frustration, anger. They've got to turn that into a positive performance at Hillsborough, haven't they?
They have, yeah. I didn't realise Sheffield Wednesday was close as 5 points to the playoffs. I think because when you look at 12th, they just seem so far away. And I think I heard Danny Roll kind of almost say, basically say they weren't really going to make the playoffs a couple of weeks ago. So, it's a big one. I always kind of think back to, obviously, Sheffield Wednesday at home was kind of really, really bleak. I think that was probably up there with Oxford away in terms of the lowest point of the season. Obviously, it was ended up being Tim Volter's last game, and kind of, where the team has come from that point, it does feel like they've made massive progress, but obviously it's still very much in the thick of a relegation battle. And Ruben, with his experience at Reading, he can probably compare notes with Danny Roll over kind of dealing with mad ownerships. But it's I don't want to say it's must win, because I feel like we seem to say that every week, and I think at this point it kind of feels like every week you're almost saying like it's must win, but it's a must get a point from, I think, at Sheffield Wednesday, I think, just to lift the mood, because realistically I don't think that Luton defeat should take away from the really kind of good run of 4 performances where they won 2 games at home and got 2 really, really good points away from home. But naturally it feels like all of that's been undone by that, that one horrible defeat against Luton. When in reality that's not the case. Hopefully we can kind of, flip it again and just bring the positivity back a little bit on Saturday.
at Fletch. City's
On
position
that
in the
note,
table.
I'm going to head off.
Thanks, Kathryn. All the best. See you soon.
See you.
Fletch. City's position in the table will hinge a lot on what happens at Pride Park on Wednesday night when Derby obviously play Preston. A comfortable win for Derby would see them rise above City in the table on goal difference. It would plunge Cardiff into the relegation zone, and suddenly City, having felt really positive after the West Brom game, albeit only points above the drop zone, that would be cut to 1 and they'd be a place above it. At one point on Saturday afternoon when the other games were playing and Stoke were winning, Cardiff were winning, Oxford were winning, they were only outside the bottom 3 by virtue of Derby having played a game less, so and being 3 points above them. So, but that is what happens on Wednesday night. I know City can't affect it, but everybody will be watching it, won't they? And concerned about what happens there.
Yeah, absolutely. But the other side of that is the players and the coaches will just be will they be watching it? There will be. The players will be watching it because I've seen them like on Friday nights when we've been lucky enough to stay with them. It's like everyone takes an interest in whatever the Friday night game is, for example, and they'll sit and watch it because some of the players might be their mates or as you put as the point is they'll be genuinely interested in what they're doing in regard also to the fact they've still got to play them at the MKM Stadium, but also how they're playing, how they're feeling, that kind of thing. So yeah, it's hugely important. There's still going to be loads of twists and turns, isn't there? Absolutely loads. And the feeling is, from my perspective now, as we head into this season, is they do have to concentrate on themselves, but at the same time, it feels like they just need a bit of a kick up the backside, aren't they, to make sure they get themselves across the line because they're not making it very, very easy for themselves. They shouldn't really need to be in this position because if you beat Luton, the point swing is substantial for this stage of the season because we said 2 or 3 weeks ago, didn't we? The best thing for Hull City now is that April could have been as boring as possible, but sadly it's not.
Well, if they'd have beaten Luton, effectively that gap to Luton would have been 10 points, 9 points plus the goal difference, which is massive. But alas, they did. Prutts, from a player's point of view, give us an insight into what it's like when you're, either a team trying to get into the playoffs or trying to fight for promotion, knowing that. You've got that. I think we spoke about this last year that you've got that big potential, career jump if you get promoted. Equally, you're at the bottom and you're in that daily stress of, well, we could get relegated here. We could be in League One, and that has a huge impact on staff that will lose their jobs because budgets are cut off the pitch. The players will be okay because they'll either get moves or whatever else. But but you can't allow yourself to be in a pit of desperation every day, can you? Because otherwise you won't go out and perform, on a Tuesday or Saturday to try and get results that get you out of the hole.
That's put it into sharp focus there, considering what we were talking about this time last year. Well, it was all inherently positive and what the glorious potential of it being a playoff campaign after a long, hard season. Now it's quite literally the opposite. It's tough because there is that sense of emotionally dealing with what that is. And whenever we chat on here, whenever I say I was very mindful of footballers' lot being reinforced as a very, very privileged one. You never hear me saying anything to the contrary of that, but it is that sense of being able to dial up and dial down the emotions of what's expected of you. We when I was at Sheffield Wednesday in a very similar situation, which then go down to the last game. We'd given ourselves enough kind of momentum to need a win against Borough on the final day, and it's one of the only games I can really remember where you kick off and just absolutely everything goes right for the best part of an hour. And again, going back to what we were saying earlier on about that own goal going in and thinking, bloody hell, got 40 odd minutes left of this, and we do fancy it, but I can't see us getting anything. The flip side of that was a game such as that where just absolutely everything went right. The crowd was on us in a good way. Borough, it helped. Borough were on the beach. They were neither bothering the top nor the bottom. They were sat in the middle, and it was probably the perfect group of people to play at that time. That's not me questioning anyone's professionalism, but we just had to do it and needed it and wanted it more than them. And it was almost the point where you enjoyed that last 15 to 20 minutes where you thought, right, we've done our bit. All we needed to do was our bit. None of that kind of who's doing what and what scores that game. It was up to us and we did it. So that's a case of being able to do everything that involves what it is to be a footballer, which is to eat right, rest right, train right, recover right, and more importantly, those 4 things to dovetail, which I've not used yet today, into those performances there as and when the whistle blows. So that's what it is. And also, if you live in the vicinity, it's dealing with the emotions. I can only imagine someone like a Louis Coyle in and around Hull being probably reminded at every single juncture what's at stake, but he'll know it himself because he understands what Hull City is and what it means to him means as much to the fans as well. So on the flip side, if you are going for the top parts of the table, there's an excitement which can, again, if you let it run away, you can get carried away. You can get that emotional kind of kickback on that, which can kind of lead to adrenaline, which can lead you to feeling fatigued when it comes to these big games or when you need to try and perform in them. So it's a very delicate balancing act. Again, no one's curing any form of terminal disease. No one's performing open heart surgery or anything like that at all. But for what it is and the professional side of what your job is, this is where it really does come into it. We spoke about it under Liam, them needing to be professional to get the job done to finish in the top 6. This team under Ruben have to be professional to make sure that whether it'd be nice, as Fletch said, to have a nice boring April given how a third / half of the season's gone. I think City fans may go, give me boring, give me safe and boring, take that every day of the week, but it might meander down to the last game. But as long as it is a City side that's above the bottom 3, obviously that then becomes relatively successful as a season as you could possibly wish for, given the dark days under Tim.
Yeah, Fletch, just before we finished, a couple of final thoughts then. On the relegation picture in general, I was surprised when I saw the QPR have won 2 in 10. They've got the worst form in the Championship. The last win was that 4-0 thrashing of Derby, I think, in John Eustace's first game or second, whatever it was. They are in bad form. Let's just go quickly, Fletch. The fixtures for this weekend. Obviously, Derby play Preston at Pride Park on Wednesday. That's their game in hand. Plymouth have got Norwich at home. Luton have got Leeds at home. Derby are away at Swansea. Cardiff away at QPR. Obviously, City at Hillsborough. Oxford at home to Sheffield United. Stoke away at Preston. Portsmouth away at Millwall. And obviously, Swansea at home to Derby. QPR at home to Cardiff. It's and then just quickly, Plymouth bottom 34 points. Then Luton 38. Derby 38, but as we keep saying, have the game in hand on Wednesday. Cardiff 40, Hull City 41, Oxford 42, Stoke 42, Portsmouth, Swansea and QPR 45. Thoughts?
I feel like you're trying to make me solve the answer to the universe with that one.
7 games to go. 8 for Derby.
Well, look, if it was as simple as, if you win X number of games more, you stay up against teams that you would be expected to beat, then the whole situation would be a whole lot easier, wouldn't it? But we said before we started recording, I remember last year when QPR went and beat Burnley, who were absolutely cruising at the top. So there's still going to be those unexpected twists and turns on the way. And I'm afraid we're going to have to buckle in and be in this for a whole lot longer, because I just can't see it being clear, obvious and predictable at this point in time. I could sit before the Plymouth game, I think with 10 games to go, I looked at the 10 games and I thought, well, there's easily 15 points that Hull City could pick up, but that was in the realms of, expectation rather than hope. And one of the games that I didn't have down as them getting maximum points is this one coming up on Saturday, because I just think that the whole occasion of Hillsborough, the fan base of Sheffield Wednesday, they're, as you say, pushing for the top 6. But then all of a sudden, this bombshell has been dropped on them where the players haven't been paid. The owner and the fans have been at war for a considerable length of time. There's that real negative swirling wind around the place at the minute, which is going to go one of two ways. I mean, it's either going to galvanise them and they're going to kick on, or they're going to, completely implode and end up in mid-table mediocrity. But we just don't know until, we can predict until kickoff, but I just don't see which way this one goes, because Hull City could turn up and have a reaction from playing against Luton, but as I say, for Sheffield Wednesday, it's so hard to call. It could well be that Hull City are back in the bottom three, and next week we're talking about, right, what's the focus now? They're in the bottom three. Is it going to galvanise them? We just don't know, because it could be a game of relegation leapfrog going forward now for ages and ages. And we still might not know any of the teams that are going down until the final day of the season. It's quite an extraordinary end to the year.
Prutts, you guys on Sky on Saturday before the game put up a graphic, didn't you, of Opta relegation predictors? And
I did.
City's was 4% before the game. It's now gone up to 20%. What's, from somebody that covers the whole championship, obviously you speak to millions of ex-players and managers and God knows what else. Kind of when you look at the bottom end of the table from Plymouth at bottom up to QPR and 7 games to go, it is mental. And anything can happen in the championship all season. It's so unpredictable. But moreover, at this stage, isn't it? Kind of what's your overriding feeling of it?
I still do fear for. It's an obvious thing to say, but Plymouth then being 6 from safety, and given Luton take out the Hull City victory, what I've not really seen since the managerial change, even though they're level on points with Derby, just a couple of points behind Cardiff. It's going on to Fletcher's point of who you'd actually put in there in the bottom 3 come the end of the season. I think it's a tough one, because a lot of it as well, with the perception of what we believe to have happened, I think broadly Gary's done a great job at Oxford United, but then you kind of go, well, he's done a good job, but you kind of look at it and go, still only 4 points above the bottom 3. At one stage, they were looking 10. One win in 10. Yeah, look, they were looking at Pompey was another one who a couple of weeks ago, probably about a month ago, seemed to, I think they were 10 away from the bottom 3 and seemingly kind of nice head of steam to go and finish in mid-table. Then they lose to Plymouth, you know what I mean? And you get back-to-back defeats, which then scuppers that for a little bit. Swansea had a great last-minute equaliser under Alan Sheehan against Leeds at the weekend. And as you say about QPR, even Preston have done a wonderful, having a wonderful. I'm readdressing my own words there. They made a change with Paul Heckingbottom coming in. And again, the perception is that it's been all plain sailing. It's not, because they're still possibly too close for comfort. So it's the permutations could be, they'll be very, very intriguing indeed. The fact that we've got teams, obviously, with 21 points to play for, broadly, everyone's in the same boat, barring Derby, who, of course, are in action. I've seen a lot of Plymouth. There's a lot to like about them. They've got injuries in defence now with is it Talavierov, who's now ruled out for the rest of the season, even though we saw some real grit and determination against Watford at the weekend, still don't look like they're going to score. So I do fear for them. I think the rest, you'd say, I know that's not me cutting Plymouth off, but I think the rest, I think whilst there's still these small gaps, as a neutral, it's fascinating to watch, but I can't offer any real substantial solace for Hull City at this moment in time, other than the fact of before the game at the weekend, they're on a pretty decent run, which they've got to get back to. But that sense of doing their own work means that they would be in the position where they'd be fine coming into the season. But it'd only take 3 or 4 games, possibly 3 games, for it to be out their hands. And suddenly they're kind of thinking, well, we need to do ours, but we also need other people to slip up.
And that's the crux of it, isn't it? Just a couple of quick points for me before we call it a day. Great to see Mohamed Baloumi back at the training ground on Monday. All smiles. That's a big step for his recovery. And Liam Miller as well, back on the grass and kicking the ball about. So that's obviously neither of those can affect this season on the pitch, but it's fantastic for them in their recovery to be back at the training ground, or in Baloumi's case, back in England and back at the training ground around the teammates and stuff. And of course, João Pedro back on Saturday at Hillsborough. I think that's probably all we've got time for today. Prutts, just remind us again, for those that didn't catch it at the start, what on earth you're going to be doing on your push bike on Thursday.
Yes, I'm going from Harrogate Town to Hull City. So the MKM is where we're going to finish on Thursday afternoon at some point. So we set off at 9 a.m. The route is approximately 67 miles. So in your own minds, try and work out what a out of shape 43-year-old father of 2 can do that type of mileage in. I think there's 3 scheduled stops. Again, barring injury or anything more sinister than that. It's Sky Bet in conjunction with the British Heart Foundation. Get yourself onto the website, learn CPR. It'll take 15 minutes of your precious time, and it might save some very precious lives if you ever unfortunately find yourself in that situation.
Fantastic stuff. It's been a pleasure to have you, as always, Captain.
Pleasure,
Fletch, where does the non-league Scarborough trip take you this weekend?
It takes me to the seaside. I won't be there this weekend. I've got a weekend off. I'm doing some family stuff, but they would be up against Marine at home on Saturday. Their season is completely done and dusted, and it's exactly what Hull City fans really should need right now, where they can't go up and they can't go down. They've got 6 games to get through, and then they've got a county cup final to look forward to. But I'm on the bench this weekend. I'm going somewhere lovely.
Resting.
Instead. Yeah,
resting
for the running. That's what it is.
So if you're
to the Riverside,
very much. If you're heading to Hillsborough, if you're one of the 3,000 plus heading up to the Steel City, looking for a Sheffield double this season, have a safe trip, and hopefully City can put smiles back on faces and get a big result. And of course, we'll be down at Watford on Tuesday night. Thanks everybody for watching. Prutts, thank you.
Pleasure. Love to see you both.
And Fletch, and thanks to Kathryn earlier on as well. And we will see you again soon.